You've probably heard the number, $1 million. Or maybe you've heard the newer version, 2 million, because a million isn't what it used to be. Financial articles throw this number around constantly, like it's some universal finish line everyone should be sprinting toward. Here's the problem. That number is almost meaningless. Not because it's too high or too low, because it's the wrong kind of number entirely. Today, I want to show you the number that actually matters. The one almost nobody talks about. The one that would completely change how you think about retirement if you understood it. And once you see it, you'll probably never think about the $1 million number the same way again.
My name is Jordan. If you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to hit some giant, vague retirement target, stick around, because the real number is a lot more useful and, honestly, a lot more achievable than you think. Subscribe if this kind of reframe is helpful to you. All right, let's talk about why the $1 million number is broken. Here's the core issue. $1 million means something completely different depending on your situation. If you retire with no mortgage, low expenses, and Social Security covering a chunk of your monthly costs, $1 million might be more than enough. If you retire with a mortgage still outstanding, high healthcare costs, and a lifestyle that costs $8,000 a month to maintain, $1 million might not last 15 years.
Same number, completely different outcomes. Which means the number itself was never actually the point. It was always a stand-in for something else, something nobody ever bothered to calculate directly. That something else is your actual monthly spending in retirement, and how long your money needs to cover it. Here's where it gets really interesting. There's a much better number than $1 million, and it's called your monthly income replacement number. It's not complicated. It's not some formula reserved for financial advisors. It's actually simpler than the $1 million myth, and it tells you something specific instead of something vague. Here's how it works. Instead of asking, how much money do I need saved, you ask a completely different question. How much monthly income do I need my savings to generate forever without running out? That reframe changes everything, because now you're not chasing an arbitrary lump sum. You're calculating a specific number that maps directly onto your actual life. Let's walk through the math, because once you see it, it clicks immediately. Financial researchers generally agree that a portfolio can sustain withdrawals of around 4% per year without running out over a 30-year retirement. This is often called the 4% rule, and while it's not perfect, it's a solid starting framework. Here's the key insight most people miss. If 4% is the safe withdrawal rate, that means your total retirement savings needs to be 25 times your annual spending. Not 25 times some randomly picked lifestyle. 25 times your actual number. So let's make this concrete.
Say your monthly expenses in retirement, housing, food, healthcare, transportation, hobbies, everything, add up to $4,000 a month. That's $48,000 a year. Multiply that by 25, and your real retirement number is $1.2 million. Now, say instead your expenses are $2,500 a month, which is $30,000 a year. Multiply that by 25, and suddenly your real number is $750,000. Not $1 million, not $2 million, $750,000. Same $1 million article, two completely different real answers, because two people have two completely different monthly expense numbers. This is why the generic $1 million target is almost useless. It assumes everyone spends the same amount, lives in the same place, and has the same lifestyle. Nobody does. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Jordan, but how do I actually figure out my number if I don't even know what my expenses will look like in 20 or 30 years?
Here's the practical approach. Start with your current monthly expenses today. Not a guess, your actual number based on what you're spending right now. Then adjust it for retirement specifically. Some expenses go down. You're no longer commuting 5 days a week. You're not buying work clothes or paying for a work lunch every day. If your mortgage is paid off by retirement, that's a massive expense that disappears entirely. Some expenses go up. Healthcare costs generally increase as you age, especially before you're eligible for full Medicare coverage. Travel and hobbies often increase too, because you finally have the time to actually use them.
For most people, retirement expenses land somewhere between 70% and 90% of their current working expenses. Not because retirement is dramatically cheaper, but because certain categories drop out completely, while others increase modestly. Let's run one more example, because the difference this makes is honestly kind of wild. Say your current expenses are $5,000 a month. Using the 80% estimate, your retirement expenses would be roughly $4,000 a month, or $48,000 a year. Multiply by 25, and your real retirement number is $1.2 million. But here's the part almost nobody accounts for: Social Security. If you're eligible for, say, $1,800 a month in Social Security benefits, that's $21,600 a year that your savings don't need to generate at all. Subtract that from your $48,000 annual need, and you only need your portfolio to cover $26,400 a year. Multiply that by 25, and your real retirement number drops to $660,000. Not $1.2 million, not $2 million, $660,000. Because Social Security is doing part of the job for you, and almost nobody factors that into the generic million-dollar conversation. This is the entire problem with the popular number. It ignores your actual expenses. It ignores your mortgage status. It ignores Social Security. It ignores whether you're retiring at 55 or 67. It's a headline number, not a planning number. Now, here's something that might genuinely change how you feel about retirement saving. Once you calculate your real number using your actual expenses and expected income sources, it's often dramatically lower than the generic figure you've been anxious about for years. That doesn't mean saving aggressively stops mattering. It means the target you're saving toward should be based on your life, not a magazine headline. So here's exactly how to calculate your own number, step by step. First, estimate your realistic monthly retirement expenses. Take your current monthly spending and multiply it by 80%, adjusting up or down if you know specific categories will change significantly for you. Second, multiply that monthly number by 12 to get your annual expense estimate. Third, subtract any guaranteed income you expect, like Social Security or a pension. You can find a rough Social Security estimate through your annual statement or the Social Security Administration's online estimator. Fourth, multiply the remaining number by 25. That's your real retirement number, the amount your portfolio actually needs to cover, using the 4% rule as your baseline.
That's it. 4 steps. No advisor required to get a working estimate. Now, this number isn't perfect. It doesn't account for market volatility in bad years, unexpected medical events, or major lifestyle changes. But it's infinitely more useful than a vague millionaire target because it's built from your actual life instead of a generic headline. And here's the psychological shift that matters most. When people fixate on $1 million without any context, retirement can feel like an impossible mountain, especially if you're starting late or your income isn't high. But when you calculate your actual number, it's often far more achievable than the panic-inducing headline version. Sometimes it's lower because your expenses are modest. Sometimes Social Security covers more of your annual need than you expected. Sometimes both. The point isn't to convince you that you need less money than you think. The point is that you need the right number, calculated from your own life, instead of an arbitrary figure designed to grab attention in a headline. Because a target you can actually calculate is a target you can actually plan around. A vague number floating in the background just creates anxiety without direction.
So if you've been avoiding retirement planning because $1 million feels impossible, try this instead.
Sit down, estimate your real monthly expenses, subtract your expected guaranteed income, and multiply by 25. You might be surprised. Not because the number will always be smaller. Sometimes it's bigger, especially if you plan on a more expensive lifestyle. But either way, you'll have something concrete instead of something vague. And concrete numbers are the only kind you can actually build a plan around. If this changed how you think about your retirement number, hit subscribe. And I want to know, when you actually run your own numbers using this method, was your real number higher or lower than you expected? Drop it in the comments, because sometimes the scariest part of retirement planning isn't the number itself. It's not knowing what your actual number even is.